I'm Max Pringle with these headlines. The Air Force suspended 2 commanders at the Massachusetts Air National Guard unit. That was the site of one of the largest U.S. intelligence leaks in years. Meanwhile, the guardsman behind the leak is expected to appear in federal court in Massachusetts for a hearing today. The 102nd Intelligence Wing of the Massachusetts Air National Guard was already taken off its intelligence mission after 21-year-old Jack Teixeira was arrested at his home 2 weeks ago. He's been in custody since. The detention hearing will determine whether Teixeira should remain in custody while he awaits charges under the Espionage Act. Prosecutors say he allegedly took classified documents related to the war in Ukraine and U.S. spy operations and posted images of them in online chat groups. From there, the documents spread to more public sites. Teixeira hasn't yet entered a plea. He faces up to 15 years in prison if found guilty. The U.S. economy grew much slower than expected in the first 3 months of the year to just 1.1% growth. The latest Commerce Department report showed that the nation's gross domestic product, the broadest gauge of economic output, weakened after growing 3.2% from July through September and 2.6% from October through December. Donna Warder has more.
The biggest obstacle the economy has been facing is the higher cost of borrowing. The Federal Reserve has raised its benchmark rate 9 times in a little more than a year. Retail sales saw a strong start in January, but in February and March they tumbled. The economy is widely expected to slip into a recession sometime this year. Donna Warder, Washington.
The Republican-controlled Montana legislature punished a Democratic transgender lawmaker Wednesday for breaking the rules of decorum when she rebuked her colleagues for voting for legislation banning gender-affirming medical treatment to transgender youth. Starting today, Zoe Zephyr, who is a transgender woman, will not be allowed on the State House floor, although she will be allowed to vote on bills remotely. Eileen Alfandary has more.
Zephyr acknowledged she raised her microphone to amplify the voices of constituents in the gallery while they chanted, "Let her speak." Zephyr also doubled down on her comments last week, which led the Republican House Speaker to silence her in the first place.
So when I rose up and said, "There is blood on your hands," I was not being hyperbolic.
Although Zephyr will be able to vote remotely, she'll be barred from participating in debate or offering amendments on the House floor. She will be allowed to participate in committees. For KPFA News, I'm Eileen Alfandary.
House Republicans passed a bill raising the nation's debt limit by $1.5 trillion while making broad cuts in government spending. The Democratically controlled Senate says the bill has no chance of passing. More from Feature Story News' Nina Maria Potts.
The Republican bid to force President Biden to negotiate over government spending or risk a disastrous default presents the administration with an immense challenge. The bill was approved 217 to 215 along party lines. The bill would raise the debt ceiling into next year, but only in exchange for a spending freeze to last a decade, which would amount to a 14% cut and would unravel key parts of President Biden's domestic agenda. Nina Maria Potts, Washington.
California transit officials are calling on the state to allocate some $5 billion over the next 5 years to help transit agencies stave off drastic cuts and massive pandemic-induced deficits. KPFA's Gilles Martel reports.
San Francisco State Senator Scott Wiener and transit officials are proposing new funding of $5.15 billion over 5 years to save public transit system across California from steep cuts.
The state needs to step in through our budget to throw a lifeline to our transit agencies.
Senator Wiener said without state funding, BART, Muni, and other big city transit systems will have to make drastic cuts because ridership since the pandemic is not recovering quickly enough to make up for the loss of the federal pandemic-related funding. The California Transit Association and Wiener's office say the state's monies they are requesting for California's public transit system can come from a mix of sources that already support transit. For KPFA, I'm Gilles Martel.
And I'm Max Pringle. You're listening to Sojourner Truth on Pacifica Radio.